IoT Unplugged, where we talk to industry leaders, innovators, and major players in the Internet of Things, bringing you the best and latest insights. Tune in to learn more. In this episode, I'm joined by Stefan Schwab, CEO of Enlighted, as we discuss the evolution of smart buildings, the key differentiators between IoT sensors and AI-enabled IoT sensors, and the use cases for integrating AI. Hi, Stefan. Thank you for joining me here on the IoT Unplugged podcast.
Yeah, hi, Caitlin, and thanks for having me.
Could you start by talking a little bit about who you are and where you come from?
Yeah, so I'm Stefan. I'm now 18 years in the buildings industry. I started my career in Germany in 2007, and then I moved on several roles across the globe. So had opportunities to work in Singapore, then in Australia, and now I'm in the United States here in California since 2018, leading Enlighted.
Great, and could you talk a little bit about what Enlighted do?
Yeah, so we revolutionize spaces where we use IoT solutions and we use subscription software solutions. And we combine cognitive sensors and intelligent lighting to boost, for example, efficiency for our customers, help them to achieve their sustainability targets. And we also care a lot about the occupants or the users of the space, that they feel that this is a place they want to be in and support their well-being. And with that, we actually transform environments and the built environment to become vibrant spaces and where we drive productivity and make a positive impact for users, but also for the planet overall.
Mm-hmm. And we will be talking about the integration of technologies like AI and IoT into smart buildings. But given that you yourself have worked in this space for 18 years, how do you understand and define a smart building? Is this a fixed definition? Is it something that's changed in the time? What are your thoughts on that?
For me personally, it definitely has changed. And even when I started in 2007, there was already a talk about smart buildings, maybe with different words. And I think we have a chance to talk about that as well, where I believe how far we have come and how far we still have to go. So when I explain it, for example, to my kids, what I'm doing and what environment I'm working, I always compare it to a smart building is like a super smart roommate who automatically adjusts the lights for me, the temperature, but also takes care of the security. But unlike a real roommate, actually, this one doesn't hog the fridge or leaves dirty socks on the floor. When I talk to industry people, then I would call it a little bit different. And I refer to a term like it's called autonomous buildings, for example, where I, as an occupant in a smart building, I don't have to worry about how the building actually interacts with me, because it does it automatically. It knows my preferences. It's pretty easy to get into the building, get my way around, but also it's pretty easy again to leave the building.
I like the roommate reference. That's a good way of thinking about it. So, given that you've said that the definition has changed, what have been the big changes since conversation started in 2007, or started talking about it?
I mean, what definitely has changed is that technology overall evolved over the years. So it's not the same as it was in 2007, and then just recently with machine learning or artificial intelligence, it changed again. What has not changed, I truly believe that this industry, what I've experienced now over the last 18 years, is very conservative. The built environment is very resistant to change and drive productivity overall. And hence, in my opinion, there are not what I would call a smart building. There are not many out there in the industry, because there's a lot of talk, but when it comes to implementation, there's also a lot of resistance and there's a lot of struggle actually to do the implementation. And I also refer to that always. I mean, AI is a prime example for me. There's a lot of hype about AI, but there's also a reality to it. For example, that AI these days, I believe you have to address AI in your products, but also for increased productivity for your own operations and so on. On the other side, there's a reality to it. Where does it really benefit? So really think about it with AI implementations. Does it make sense? or is it just because it's nice to have it on a slide and it doesn't really boost anything? For us, it would be, as I said before, productivity in a building, the well-being in a building. Does it really add to that? So from that point of view, I still believe that we have a lot of challenges ahead to create more and more smart buildings, which will help us to address these big challenges we face in terms of sustainability, reduce our carbon footprint, but also when I made the roommate example at the beginning about a smart building, that when I walk into a building, I don't have to worry about anything because actually the building takes care of me. The technology implemented in the building takes care of me. So that's my maybe not so positive take on where we are today. On the other side, there's a lot of things we can do in the future to improve to where we are today, to create more smart buildings, to create more smart environments, to tackle all these big challenges we have ahead of us.
So you just spoke a little bit about this resistance, as you characterized it, to change. In your opinion, do you still see an increase in smart buildings? Is this a market that's still growing in spite of this?
Definitely, because again, increasing the amount of smart buildings and then automatically making the environment we are all in smarter. And there's so many. The statistic is out there that we spend roughly 80% of our time indoors, so inside buildings. So it's very important actually to do something about it. Then it's also the other statistic that buildings contribute around 40% overall to the CO2 output or for the environment. So there is definitely something we need to do. So overall, I want to stay positive that there's technology there which actually can tackle that. The challenge is really in today's environment that we don't have the speed. Coming back to what I said before, I believe this built environment is very conservative, slow changing. So we don't have the speed to add as many smart buildings as I would like to see for the reasons given, because it just makes sense. And what pops in my head all the time is when I remember customer conversations, or when going into customer conversations, and security is, I think, one topic. Data privacy concerns is one topic when we talk about smart buildings, about edge computing, about cloud, where there's a lot of resistance from the customer side explaining why, for example, a cloud deployment in certain environment makes sense. Then on the other side, you sit in this meeting and everybody, I exaggerate a little bit, but when you think about it, a lot of people are on their phones using all kinds of things connected to a non-secure Wi-Fi solution and texting via WhatsApp and so on. So in the end, we also we're not hypocrites in the end, but we have different judgments in terms of what is acceptable, what I do on my phone, it's a company phone, for example, and texting via WhatsApp with others, and not have on top of their mind the security topic. And on the other side, when it comes to implementing technology, which is cloud-based, where we have edge computing and so on, then security is a big topic which slows things down. So I think as a consumer, we as society, we are further advanced in terms of what we accept to drive outcomes and to make our life more easy. When it comes to the built environment, we are more hesitant to implement similar solutions. Yes, the data is different, but similar solutions actually to drive the built environment towards more smart buildings and towards more sustainable buildings.
Yeah, I spoke to someone about data privacy and security more generally, and just how an awareness means that the end user ultimately isn't going to accept a solution that they think is insecure, that they think might lead to problems further down the line. So I think it's a really interesting point that this seems to be coming up in your conversations with regards to smart buildings.
Yeah, but isn't that the crux in the end, that yes, from that point of view, we are very hesitant and we are very risk averse. And then on the other side, when you see, and I also, as part of Siemens, we are part of a big corporation, when you see then sometimes how loose people are using this technology, where it's also the data will be processed in the cloud, will be sent to the cloud. When it comes to, yes, it makes my life much easier as a consumer when I do this. So this is for me, and sometimes hard to understand. So you need a lot of education there. And I can say from my experience, and I have the advantage to talk a lot to customers overall, this is actually a nice starting point when you say, look, guys, do you use WhatsApp? Do you connect to any kind of Wi-Fi which is out there? And most of the time the answer is yes. And then you can start a different conversations about data security, because the data we would process in smart buildings is most of the times far less crucial than the ones people use when they just use their phone for consumer topics.
So why don't we talk about some of the technologies that are making buildings smarter, and also, to use this term you used earlier, autonomous? What are some of the things that you see more generally?
I mean, when we think about autonomous buildings or smart buildings, we think about, and I mentioned that before, how can a building adapt to the needs of the user? So how easy can I actually go through my working day? Let's use that as an example. So when I arrive at a building, it knows that I booked a desk, for example, today, that I want to get in and I want to need to go on a certain floor. And I actually could do this with my own device, because everything could be there, that I get access to the building, that then it actually sends me the elevator to the ground floor, only gets me to the floor I booked or I should have access to. Then my desk is there. In the end, then the environment knows already what is my preference. Is it my preference sitting at the window? Is my preference sitting closer to, for example, the kitchen area, and so on? What's the temperature I normally am comfortable with, where I am the most productive, and so on? And this technology, all what I described before, to implement that use case is there. Where we struggle also today to implement that at scale is still that we think from a technology point of view in silos, because all of this is not provided just by one supplier. This is provided by many, many companies out there, and everybody is top notch in one area, or a couple of companies are top notch in this area, a couple are there. So what we need to do there as an industry from a technology point of view, really to make interoperability happening. And yes, we claim that we are open, but when you really look into the details and when you implement projects, you also see that this is another hurdle for customers to implement real smart buildings, because you still have these siloed different technologies, and they're not talking to each other. They're not sharing easily data. Yes, you can make it, but it's still a heavy lift. When you go to implement IoT solutions for smart buildings, and this is what we need to overcome. So the technology to tackle most of our problems is there. The challenge is implementing it. And we spoke about some of these things. There's the security topic. I just spoke about the topic of interoperability, and talking about an ecosystem compared or versus an ecosystem, which some Siemens managers also refer to in their talks, that we need to think definitely more open, and we need to think that only together as an industry, together with the customer, we are able to solve these problems and implement this top-notch technology which is out there.
So to this point about interoperability, which is really, really interesting, and of course really important when, you're right, a customer buys, I don't know, a sensor, and they want to make sure it can and work with another sensor, and they have issues. What do you think needs to be done to address that, if I may pose quite a difficult question?
Yeah, again, there are different opinions out there. My personal opinion is, I spoke about education before. In general, education needs to happen in the industry. And this is also on us as suppliers, that we need to provide them more guidance. We need to reduce the hurdles then for customers for implementation. There's another study, I think, from IBM out there, where it talks about why are executives hesitant to implement IoT solutions, which addresses these challenges of smart buildings and so on, or making buildings smart. This is really also the hurdle of implementation and interoperability. So coming back to that, it needs to be, in my opinion, client-driven, but it only can be then in the end client-driven if the industry, like us together, have a more educational approach and take away this hesitancy about working together, taking down the silos, taking away the security concerns that, again, all the things getting addressed, security is involving, everybody's working on that, and so on. So this will, in my opinion, help from an end customer point of that the end customer drives it, end customer point of view, to be able to overcome these hurdles.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a really good point, and I hope it will be something those listening take away. Why don't we talk a little bit about AI, which I think is everywhere, but I think, like you rightly said earlier, there has to be the use case for it. How are you seeing AI deployed across smart buildings, and what would be some of the use cases that might be good for it versus some of the use cases that might not need it?
Yeah. So we are at the beginning, coming also back to what I said early on. This built environment is very conservative, very slow change. So also there, when I think about implementation, how much is already out there, really installed, and people get value out of it, there's not a lot. From a technology point of view, many things are there. For example, at our end, we are talking about AI optimized IoT sensors compared to the traditional IoT sensors. Then you have a lot of times we talk about these platforms in buildings where they collect a lot of data, and a lot of data is actually you don't need for any kind of use case. It's just noise, and you have to make a decision, or AI has to make a decision. What kind of data do we need? What kind of data do I process? Which kind of data I can process at the sensor level itself, for example, or which data I need to send to the cloud for processing, and so on and so on. So there is massive potential, especially coming back to slowly changing technology is there but not implemented. There's massive opportunity in the built environment to deploy AI. And what I also want to make a point here for me, or how I see the industry as well, is that there will be not as much new buildings built out there going forward, because most of the buildings we need, when you look at data again, most of the buildings we need, they are already built. So we don't need to build new buildings. We need to take what we have today and see if with technology, if we can optimize these buildings, make this, coming back to the term smart buildings, make this a smart building. And one example here is we have a customer in higher education, and the customer was talking to us and said, look, my professors, they're always screaming, there's never actually room available when they need room. It looks like we need to build that amount of square footage or square meters, because it was in Europe, square meters on top to be able to accommodate the needs of our professors. And then during the discussion, we came to the approach that, hey, why don't you use smart IoT sensors to figure out how this space is actually used? And then you can actually show the data to not only professors, but also to the chancellors, the vice chancellors of the university. And then you can make a decision if you really need more space. And in the end, like what we actually see a lot of times in the industry, data backed up the story of, no, we don't need more space. We just need to reallocate space or kind of change the setting. And then we even have excess space for the needs of our professors and students today. And this is the times of where I see built environment using technology with AI. There's more to come because then this kind of data can also actually be already analyzed with AI, and also already recommend some of the decisions then which today still need to be done by humans by looking into a lot of data sets, or during that time, not today anymore, but when we had this project together, actually we needed to look into the data ourselves. So that's how I see actually AI on the technology side making an impact for specific use cases than for the customer.
So you would say that the primary difference between an AI optimized sensor and an IoT sensor is that it can analyze and sort through the data for you, as opposed to having someone do it themselves.
The analysis of the data here, because it's a lot of data, cannot be done on a sensor level, at least not how we see the sensor, because for that, the processing capability is not strong enough. But the sensor, for example, could make easy and time-crucial decisions, because it would decide, does this data need to go to the cloud, or can this data actually be processed on a sensor level itself? And it also can decide, is this a time-crucial process I need to perform here, or is this not time-crucial? So these are the things, so which it also helps then in the end, because a lot of times in the early days when we implemented as an industry solutions like that, we thought everything needs to go to the cloud to be processed. And that's not the case anymore. So that's one advantage, that you don't need to send everything to the cloud. Secondly, sending it to the cloud, having a process coming back also has a latency with it. And in the end, if you have, as I said before, time crucial processes you wanna handle, then the sensor, the AI enabled sensor, can decide it can be done on the sensor level instead of sending it to the cloud. I can give you an example today with occupancy sensors. You have the challenge when I sit like here, in for example, in the office, I have an occupancy sensor who manages the light for me above me. I sit here and I do focused work and I don't move. And it depends on how it's commissioned overall, but let's assume after 2 minutes of no movement because you're sitting there, the sensor would decide, oh, there's nobody there anymore. I actually can turn off the light. So what you have to do then as an individual, you have to wave every 2 minutes. Not sure if you had this experience as well. I have this a lot of times, regardless where I go, that's the case, and I have to move. Is this annoying? For some it's annoying, for some it's not annoying. But when I talk about smart buildings, this should not happen overall, because the sensor should realize that a person is still here, because the person has not left the area, because the person came at one stage and the person didn't leave later. So you should not turn off the light there. This is, for example, an AI use case we are thinking about implementing at the sensor level to take away, again, for some users of a building, annoying task, and that you have to wave every couple of minutes because the light turns off.
So you provided a concrete example of how data can be used to make decisions around the use of space. Do you have any more examples that you can speak of where you've seen that happen?
Yeah, so I mean, another use case, for example, we also implement solutions around location intelligence, or for the industry term, it's real-time location services. And another one is with our SaaS solution, how to interact with the building. We call this Connect, how an employee connects with the building, where we have, for example, a temperature feature. And then we democratize temperature for users of a building, where they can use, again, the smartphone and say, hey, I'm sitting here and for me it's too hot and too cold. And as the application knows the individual, that the individual would like to have a temperature around a certain degree, the system then learns in the end, if this individual books, for example, in 2 weeks again a desk, that the preference of this individual is a temperature around X Fahrenheit or X Celsius when we are in Europe. So the system learns that it can automatically then adjust the temperature around this area to the preference of individuals. And as you have many, you also can then make recommendations, because you didn't want to have someone sitting who prefers, I give a concrete example, 55, which might be a little bit low. Let's make it 60 Fahrenheit in a certain area, and they reserve a desk there. So you would not recommend, who is also looking for booking a desk in a building, someone who prefers 75 degrees Fahrenheit, to book a desk close to this individual, because it's likely that you have a challenge there and both will complain all the time, too hot and too cold. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. So this is how systems can learn. This technology is there. If we implement that, it makes it very, very user-friendly and very focusing on well-being of employees when they come into the built environment. And this is how we think about how can technology help. Customers then give us the feedback, hey, this is helpful, this is great, because normally I receive thousands of calls a day. It's too hot, too cold. If you have a solution like that connected to the BMS, which also brings us to the next topic here, there is interoperability in that use case I just gave between the building management system and an application of an employee who decides what temperature they want to work in that day. Customers are really happy, because you take away these thousands of calls a day where employees complain about it's too hot, it's too cold, it's too windy, it's too bright, and so on and so on. So you democratize that, and in the back you have a system with machine learning / AI who is learning about preference of individuals. And next time you enter a space, it's actually already preset, because the system knows what is your preference to be most productive, to like the space you're in.
Something like that would be a godsend in my office. That would revolutionize things. Something we haven't touched upon, Stefan, that I'm conscious of before we wrap up, is this narrative around sustainability. So how do you see smart buildings tying into that?
I gave some percentages and examples before. Smart buildings play a massive role, because buildings, not smart buildings, so buildings in general play a significant role there, because they contribute 40% to the CO2 output by the energy they consume today. So a big portion of that. And secondly, also because the other stat I gave was we spend 80% of our times indoors. And a lot of times, coming back now with mandates, employers are doing, spending most of these 80% as well in an environment where we perform work. So it's a crucial pillar overall to sustainability. I want to be a little bit like at the beginning, a little bit more provocative, because unfortunately, there's a lot of lip service, in my opinion, out there, putting something on slides that for the built environment, we really drive down the CO2 footprint. We really implement solutions which help us to achieve sustainability targets. You need to have it today because everybody wants to see that you drive sustainability. Coming back to the implementation issue and the hurdles and everything, it's going very slow. And there we as an industry, together with our customers, we definitely need to do more in terms of creating more smart buildings, which help us to achieve more efficient buildings, which helps us then to achieve sustainability targets. And overall, it will be good because we will consume less energy, which, again, we need to. When I think about how Enlighted originally started, the company I'm working for, is they saw actually in the middle of the night, all the lights were on in this high-rise building, but nobody was working because there was no smart technology to detect occupancy. So that's back in the days of the Enlighted founding days back in 2010. So today we have come a long way. So occupancy sensors in most of the states, in most of the countries, is now a must. It's part of policies / law already. But this is how it started, to see how much energy we waste and the lights are burning. And we need to tackle that. And there are more examples like that, what you can see today when you walk up into buildings where technology is already there and you could tackle this to really help to drive sustainability. So we need to overcome this topic of it's not just a lip service. We really need to believe in it and not just put it on slides because people want to see it. We as a society, we as an industry, we need to start implementing that at scale. And coming back, the technology is there. It's really the implementation hurdle. And it's on us together, customers and industry, to do our educational part first, but then drive the implementation together and show that it's not an IoT implementation is not such a big step and with so many hurdles that it's also there's a way to implement easily.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good note to end on. So thank you so much, Stefan, for taking the time to speak with me and sharing some of your insights.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
IoT Unplugged.